killing off characters on Sopranos. One of the ones, Adriana, was specifically the audience response was through the roof on that one. Can you talk about that?
Was that one? I think Pussy was the other one. People really didn't want Pussy to go, and they would say to me, "What'd you kill Pussy off for? That's ridiculous. That show's no good without him." You know, oh my God, he was such a great character. People didn't want him to go, and Adriana was the other one.
How were the decisions made to let them go?
Story. It was just the plot. I mean, if you knew the, okay, she got herself into a position where realistically she had cooperated with the FBI. There is no way she would not have met that fate. And she made the mistake of telling her boyfriend that. And her boyfriend made the mistake of thinking that somehow or other it would be all right, even though right from the get-go Christopher knew she was dead. As soon as she said that to him. But he couldn't face up to it, and all the crying, and he goes and tells Tony, "Don't make me do it," and all that stuff. That's not a choice. That's where we'd written her. We didn't plan that was what would happen. Once we had done that, there's no way that she would have been allowed to live.
Yeah, but was there a point though in the writing that you said, "Oh, this, if we go this way, she's gone," and then?
No, I don't think we thought it through that much. Well, I get it must have been. It had to be that. But when was it? I don't know. I don't think when we first thought, well, let's compromise this character and have her be flipped by the feds. I don't think we thought it then that she'd necessarily be dead. Because in reality, in organized crime life, there are a lot of guys out there who are leading double life all the time. They're talking to the feds, and they're running their crew on the street, and they never get caught at either one. So another way of putting that is there are probably characters in The Sopranos, guys that were there every week, who were talking to the feds, but none of us knew it. And we're talking to the feds on a regular basis. And no one in the crew knew it, and none of us know it, including myself. Because that's the reality.
Okay, moving on to some of the topics that were covered throughout. This was during the time of 9/11 actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
How was that treated on the show? Or was it
I think it changed the whole show. I think the show became a little more melancholy after that.
What way? How did it affect it?
Just didn't feel like the same America. Didn't feel something important and big had happened. Something big and different and important had happened. And had, in ways I can't even begin to. Well, I think it threw Tony Soprano to begin with. I think that it affected him a great deal. I think it rocked his world. Now maybe that's kind of unrealistic for an organized crime guy. But I don't think so. The FBI guys told me that they had those guys were volunteering to help. Were volunteering to finger Islamic radicals and stuff that they were doing business with.
How did it affect you? Where were you when
I was in, what's the name of that lake? Saranac Lake? Lake Placid. I was in Lake Placid writing the first script of the season. And I don't forget what season it was. And went up there to get away. And I called Terry Winter to ask me a question. He was writing in Los Angeles. So I said, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, "All right." I said, "What's happening?" He said, "Oh, nothing. I'm just trying to get in touch with this guy downtown, see if he's okay." And I thought he was in Los Angeles. I thought something had happened in Los Angeles. He said, "Don't you know what happened?" I said, "No." And he told me what had happened. saw it on TV, and a little while later came back to New York. But I think it was that day, the next day, I guess it was that we had it discussed in the show. Yeah, Bacala and Tony had that discussion about Nostradamus and all that. That happened right after the hearing about it.
You think that really changed the direction of the show at that point?
It's changed yes. I mean, to me, it did. I think there was a different feeling afoot in the show. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know whether it actually was there or whether that's my feeling about it or whether these are my personal feelings. I can't sort it out, actually. It certainly did for a couple of seasons, anyway. The show wasn't as lighthearted as it had been. But to a certain extent, I think that's true. I think it did, in a certain extent, become less lighthearted. Some people say, "Oh, it was funnier. The show was funny in the beginning, and then it got to be too dark." I think there might have been a sadness that crept into it, and a sense of foreboding. There was definitely a sense of foreboding. In fact, that was actually developed consciously, and the last episode of the entire series is really about that feeling of foreboding. Unfortunately, nobody saw it. Nobody understood that or paid attention to that because they got caught up as to whether he got killed or not at the end, and why would you use a Journey song? And so the actual meaning of the episode, no one's ever talked about, really.
We'll get to that in a moment. Just a couple more of the topics. The show also, there were gay issues on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to say about those specifically?
Okay, issues, plural, you mean?
Oh,
I think the only thing I could really say is that at that time, I don't know about now, LCN, as we call it, La Cosa Nostra, was probably not a very gay-friendly environment. But as we know, there are gay people everywhere, and so I think there you probably have to stay closeted. And that character of Vito, if that's what you're referring to, that was brought to us. This is the only time it ever happened. Was the actor came to us and said, "I want to play a gay guy," and he gave us this book, which we never read, but we still went ahead with the idea that Vito would be gay. And then there had been an incident where, kind of like the Vito story, in one of the crime families here, it might have been in New Jersey, where a captain had been caught in a gay bar and was killed by two guys who worked for him. So that was back in the 80s.
Another thing that kind of played a big part in it was food in the show.
A huge part in it, yeah.
Was that intentional?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, just Italians, it's like, it's a major preoccupation. A recreation, preoccupation, discussion, constantly. At least in my family and every Italian family I've ever been to visit. It's a big deal.
Now, going back to the bigger picture, at HBO, how, as the years went on, talk about your relationship with HBO. Did they leave you alone? Were you?
Yeah, they did. I mean, they were always the best organization I ever worked for with. They were always. We had a couple of fights, which is amazing that I can remember them because that's how few we had. So that I actually can remember the ones that we did have. But then also, after a certain amount of time, if I discovered that if you have a show that's that much of a phenomenon, there's nothing they can tell you anyway. You don't need to listen anymore, and they know that, and so they don't bother. And I guess all they can do at that point is hope that you are reasonable. I always tried to, I had seen people do, I don't talk to the network. I don't want to even take their calls. I never did that. Because I think I think you can you can lose your perspective if the show becomes too successful and you think you're infallible and that, I think you can make big mistakes, and it's actually, it's good to try to listen to people, at least listen once in a while, see what they're saying. So I never closed them out of anything, but I began to hear from them less and less. Maybe they hated what was going on. I don't know.
You mentioned early on that you did have one kind of blow up with them.
We had two. We had one about one was about the name of the show, and then we had one was about whether Tony should kill the guy in the 5th episode of the 1st season, the rat up in Maine or wherever he was. And Chris Albrecht didn't want. He said, you have 4 episodes there. You've created one of the most compelling protagonists in American television, and you're flushing him down the toilet by having him kill that guy, because it had never been done, and it was very brutal. He saw the film and he was like freaked out by it. I said, well, didn't you read the script? He said, well, it didn't seem like that in the script. I said, well, it said exactly what was going to happen. So I don't know. You can't have him kill that guy. You can't have him kill that guy. And I said, well, look, why don't we just skip the episode? We don't have to put it on the air. It doesn't have to do with the one before or the one after. And he flipped out. What are you, a wise guy? And I wasn't trying. I just said, don't show it. And then a little bit of massaging, and he asked us. We put in a scene which made it okay for him that the guy was selling drugs. I don't know. It didn't matter to me whether the guy was selling drugs or not. I could believe he was selling drugs. I could believe he wasn't selling drugs. But if you need to see him selling drugs, fine. And that somehow made it okay to kill him. But the fact that he had betrayed everyone that he loved, that wasn't enough.
So basically, though, the Tony Soprano character, that was for HBO. That was the turning point. Was that when Tony would actually kill someone?
Yeah. I mean, look, this was uncharted territory. I mean, I don't mean to make light of this. I mean, if you're a guy running that operation and you're spending all this money on this show, and all of a sudden, and television had been this very much sort of like with all these phony TV morals and lack of reality, and all of a sudden, the guy that your entire network is riding on is going to strangle somebody to death with a piece of piano wire? That had never been done. What are you, crazy? You can't do that. That's the end. That's what he thought. And even if that's not what he thought, that's what he was worried would happen. Maybe he got it, maybe he understood it, but he was afraid of it.
And what happened when it actually aired? Did you get any kind of...
Oh, people thought it was great. I mean, I said to him in that conversation, I said, Chris, let me tell you something. Given this, and the show was all shot, it was all there. The whole story was there about the guy had ratted out some people in Jersey, and Tony saw him, and Tony felt it was his duty that this guy had ratted out people Tony knew, and it was Tony's job as a soldier to take him out. I said, you're completely wrong about this. I said, this guy is a mob boss in New Jersey. If he doesn't kill this guy, he's worthless. He's worthless as a mob boss. He's worthless as a TV gangster. He's worthless as a movie gangster. I've lost interest in him. And I knew I was right about that.
Did you see him as a hero or a villain?
Tony?
Yeah. Where'd you see him on the scale?
Oh, I never thought of it that way. I guess he's a villain. He's a bad guy. He kills people. He bullies people. He brutalizes people. Yeah. But at the same time, conveniently enough, in the world that he was living in, he was one of the better ones. So in that sense, it's all a shell game.
You mentioned that your other feud with HBO was the title of the show. Can you talk about what that was?
Yeah, they wanted to call it Family Guy, Family Man, and we didn't want to. And they had have people who do this. I think we had like 1,000 names, list after list after of possible names for the show, and we didn't want to do it. And including, I mean, the cast was aghast that they would want to change. I remember Stevie Van Zandt said, "You can't. It's got to be The Sopranos. This is bullshit. You can't let this. You can't win. You got to win this one." And we did. And the only reason we won is because I guess that show Family Guy came on the air, that animated show, and then they gave up.
Did you have a lot to do with the marketing of the show itself?
No, not really. No. I mean, they kept me. I used to go to those meetings all the time, but they really know what they're doing there. HBO, they're the best.
And how secret did you have to keep the scripts and the story?
Oh, it was awful. It was really bad. It was very difficult. And for a couple of almost several seasons, we had a rat in the organization who was giving this stuff out. Happened twice.
Did you find out who it
We
was?
never could find out who it was. I think it was two different ones. And one of them might have been someone who was, it might have been it was either like a driver who didn't work, a driver or a stunt guy, maybe, who didn't work there all the time. It was like a pickup guy that we used for only at the big events like Christopher's Crash. When we picked up a lot more crew, that one somehow that got out. Big crash, but he wasn't close enough, whoever he was, to know what had happened. All he knew was that Christopher was in an accident, and that was made public.
Did you ever have red herrings so that people?
We did, yes. We started writing. Yeah, we wrote scenes in which what's that character's name? The guy whose head got run over. You know, Frank. The mob boss from New York. I'm blocking his name. What? What is his name? Frank Vincent. Frank Vincent's character. Phil Leotardo. In the season where Tony was shot by his uncle, we had Frank Vincent go down and shoot a scene in which he went outside of Junior's house onto the set, and he looks through a window, and he fires into the window. He said, "What's that about?" And I said, "Well, because I'm shooting Tony." Yeah. Why? Why am I shooting Tony? What did I do? Because he thought that's the end of him. Just don't worry about it. Just do it. I got no reason to. Not at this point. I hate the guy, but why would I do it now? I wouldn't go to his house myself, and so we and we couldn't tell him why. We did that a couple of times with people doing things that we threw away. The last script we had, we did a fake draft that didn't end at Holston's. That Tony went back to the Bada Bing and talked to somebody about something. We had a fake ending that was, but we knew it wasn't going to be there. But
did you actually shoot it?
No, I don't think we should. No, I think we intended to shoot it, but we were so far over budget by then it didn't happen. Maybe we did shoot it. It's a good question. And then the crew never even got, for a long time, never got the scene. Never even got the scene at Holston's. For a long time, most of the people in the crew thought that last episode ended with Tony raking the leaves in the yard. Because we just didn't want it getting out there that there was this, it was very hard, it was very difficult.
So, talk about the show ending. How was it decided that would be the last season?
HBO finally got around to saying, at the end of the fourth season or whatever, well, we should probably think about how long we're going to do this, and maybe you should think about coming up with an ending. Which is another way of saying, okay, we're ready to start contract negotiations with you. That's really all it is. And then I say, oh, okay, all right, well, let's think about it. And I think it was just enough. I could just tell that was enough. That we had done it enough, and it was time to end it.
And at what point did you conceive of that ending?
There was a variation of that ending about 4 years before the end. That ending itself about 2 years before the end.
How did you come up with it? What was the? It was so promoted. Everyone knew it was something was going to happen. Talk about writing that last episode.
It was kind of different. It was kind of different than writing the other ones because a lot of the characters were dead by that time. There had been this massacre in the episode before. It had a sense of there was this strange sense to it, which I didn't realize going in until I started directing it, actually, of doing just what I said Steve Cannell said you shouldn't do. Tony went here, he talked to his sister, then he went there, he talked to Junior, then he went here, and that's all it was, Tony going around talking to various people. And in a sense, it was like he was saying goodbye. That wasn't the intention, and I didn't realize that was going to be the case, but once I started to direct it, I saw, yeah, first he visits this one, he visits that one, and that's all he really did during the whole episode. I mean, there was more story to it than that. It was the problem with him and Phil Leotardo, and there was also the Anthony Jr., his future. But a lot of it was, he had a conversation with Meadow, he went to see Syl, who was already comatose, a lot of visiting day.
Now, did you write that by yourself, or did you have the... Did you show it to anyone?
Yeah. I mean, they all knew. Because we plotted out the story. Like I said, we were all in the room when we plotted out the story. But it got sort of short shrift because everybody was moving. I mean, Matthew Weiner by that time was gone. Terry was tied up doing. He was already busy. He was still on the show, but he was supervising the show that Matt was supposed to be on. I don't know. The whole writing crew was all kind of falling apart a little bit. So didn't receive the same amount of focused attention as some of the others.
What was the atmosphere on the set during those last days?
Strange. Very strange. And then what happened would be like, for example, you'd finish someone's work that day. For example, Stevie. He was lying in the hospital bed. He didn't even get to say anything. He was comatose. And then, I'd finally say, okay, that's it. We've got that scene. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, right? The first AD. Moving on, wrong set, all that. And then somebody comes out with a champagne and a cake and say, this wraps out Steven Van Zandt. Everybody claps, and it was very emotional, actually. And it happened with everybody, except for Jim Gandolfini. No, it did. I mean, it did, because finally that was their last day. But it was Robert and Jamie Lynn. It was sort of like, in a way, it was like killing them off. It was peculiar.
How many people knew what the ending was for the show?
Oh, maybe a total of. It depends on what point. I mean, when we were shooting it, I think everybody knew by that time. But probably right up until then, maybe 20, 30 people. The cast, the keys, and producers, and of course HBO.
And what was the thought behind what was the process that you used for that last scene that is so famous, in terms of the song that you chose, the blackout?
What was the process?
Yeah. As much as you want to reveal about.
It's just, I mean, I could send you the final 5 pages, and that's what it says in those pages. Just what you saw is what it says.
At what point did the song come into it?
That Christmas, my nephew gave me a compilation CD he had made, and on it he had put "Don't Stop Believing," and it reminded me that I always wanted to use "Don't Stop Believing," because "Don't Stop Believing" is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. I always liked the song, but it doesn't have a, I don't know, artsy or artistic reputation. For some reason, it's considered sort of like junk rock and roll. But it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful melody, and then I guess I think my wife and I played it. I think I thought right then that's the one. Just after my nephew gave it to me, I thought, oh yeah, that one. Don't Stop Believing. And the reason for it was because that would have been a song that Tony would have played on the jukebox. That would have been a song from his high school years or his young adult years. So if he were to go down it, that would be something he would play. He would have remembered Journey from being young and having probably had their albums at that time.
Had you actively been looking for that right song? Or were the other ones in contention?
Not actively. I knew it. I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a different song, which I'm not going to mention. But then, as I say, this is about 4 or 5 months before we shot it that my nephew gave me, and that song was in the back of my head anyway. My nephew gave me that CD. But then, even I wasn't completely decided. I played in the scout van. We were going around during prep. I actually, for the first time, took the crew and said to what do you guys think for the last song? I played that one, and I played two others. And when I put that when I put that on, they all went like, "Oh, are you fucking kidding? Oh my God, Journey, Don't Stop Believing. That's the way this show's gonna end." And then every one of them, starting like a half hour later, said, "You know what? I think that's actually good." Every one of them came around and said, "Actually, that actually works really well." So.
In the final scene, did you film more than what we saw when it went to black?
No. I mean, there might have been a few shots. No, I think we used it all. I mean, was there stuff beyond that?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Was there any other thing that you were considering outside of going to black? Is there another?
No.
Talk about the response that you got when it aired.
Some people liked it, some people didn't like it.
Where were you?
I was in Europe. I was in France.
Intentionally?
No, it was time for us to go. I mean, I think people said, "Oh, he fled for the." I would have been glad to have been here for the reaction. I probably would have enjoyed that had I been here. But it was overdue for us to be. We have a house there. It was overdue for us to be there, so we left. I think we got there about a week or two. And then I talked to Steve Van Zandt on the phone. He says, "You know what's going on here, don't you?" I said, "What?" I read that some people don't like it. He says, "Holy Jesus, are you kidding?" And he started saying that he had been on some radio call-in show on that Monday, talking about something else, and had been thrust into the position of defending the ending against these very angry people. And it kept on happening because he has these radio shows. He said, then throughout the week, I began to see people turning around. I began to see people saying, at first I hated it, but now I kind of, yeah. He said, I saw the whole progress of it change and the whole complexion of it. Some people still think they say it was a cop-out. I read this woman, Nikki Fink, does it. Isn't that what writers are paid to do, is write? In other words, if I just kept on writing, I wouldn't have ended it there. Like I had cheated the studio somehow. I just got into the middle of a sentence and said, "Oh, that's it. Time to go. That's it. Unless you want to pay me more money." Nobody? Okay, that's it. Well, ridiculous.
Do you think you'll ever reveal?
This is what she thinks writing is, I guess. It's like just this. That's nothing to do with thinking. It's just writing.
Do you think you ever will reveal your thought process behind it?
I don't know. Probably not. It's no big mystery. There's not a lot of mystery to it. And people, I mean, it was also fun, I mean, to a certain extent, all these crazy explanations, and the guy who wrote 230 pages about onion rings and communion wafers and all this stuff, it was fun, but it just reminded me of that whole, the walrus is Paul and all. It's like, what are you pieces? It was insane. It was really fun. I mean, God, can you imagine just to have that much attention put to something you do? It was spectacular. And the fact that so many people were angry, it's good they were angry.
A lot of people thought their cable had gone out.
Yeah, that was not intentional. I mean, now I could see where people might have. I think maybe I thought, well, some people will think that, but not that many, is what I thought. But just the idea that something you've done has got that much, had people talking that much, I think you have to say you've succeeded as if that's your interest, is communicating with people and being a writer and being an artist, then I think you have to say, well, people were looking. They were paying attention.
Yeah, for the whole series, really. What do you think is the legacy of that series?
Well, how could I possibly know? I don't know.
What do you think kept people glued to the sets?
I think they never knew what was going to happen next. And they were worried about what was going to happen next. And they never really knew. And that was what most of the work was about. And here we are, like, what was that? When did we go up there? In 2007. 2007 is how many thousands of years of human drama, of every story being done 15,000 times, and then television itself, movies for 100 years, eating up and digesting story after story after story. We've seen every story. And then television, which, our television alone, gobble up how many stories in a week? How many hour shows have there been on? Story, the kidnapped girl, the midget at the door, whatever, We've seen it all. And so the trick, the real work was to work such that people could not use their even subconscious understanding of how these things always go. So that something different happened, other than not just to be different, not just to be contrary, but just to truly be the element of surprise, and that this is not have to be more like life, because you don't really know what's going to happen. In life, we really don't know, and in that show, that's what we try to do. Is you really don't know what's going to happen next, but that's really hard, because we all come to it with this huge background of the butler did it, or you name it. Oh, I've seen that that character, yeah, the crusty, lovable guy. Oh, he's gonna be the one that the vampire kills, right? We all know these things. So that was all the work. That was the time-consuming part of it.
Do you miss it?
Well, there was a lot of activity. I missed that level of activity, sort of. But I also don't miss it. It was a lot of work. It was enough. I'd done it enough.
Well, what are your current projects?
I have a couple of them. I'm not going to talk about them, but one's a thing for HBO and a movie.
So you're back to doing for a feature?
A what?
A feature?
Another feature that won't get produced. Yeah.
Was there any point during Sopranos where you did stop thinking about feature in the back of your head?
I guess, okay, when you say, do you miss The Sopranos? That's the answer. I had actually lost my Jones to do a feature during that show. Therefore, it meant that was satisfying me creatively. So, that's the answer. I mean, I still wanted to do one in the future, but I felt I was really completely 100% engaged in doing something good in that show. I felt challenged all the time.
Who do you think has influenced your writing the most?
Boy, that's hard to say. I have to say probably my family, because when you're little, that's where you get your ideas of how people behave. Observing them, your parents probably, and siblings. I didn't have any siblings, so my parents, I guess, probably that's influenced me the most. Just in terms of way back when. If you're talking about other artists that have influenced me, oh boy, a lot. I'd have to say. I think I've been influenced by Arthur Miller, Richard Pryor. Kubrick, Scorsese, David Lynch, Hitchcock for sure, Dickens, Shakespeare. It gets silly after a while.
What do you think has been your proudest career achievement up until now?
The Sopranos.
Any regrets in terms of your career?
No, not really. I mean, I've said, I was talking to you when the camera wasn't running. I said in this interview that I used to do this thing where I would take these TV. I didn't want to be in television, and I would take these TV development deals in order to sort of become a fellowship for my true work that I wanted to do, which was writing and making motion pictures. And I think that was an act of cowardice. Actually, I think I should have. I became unused to being a writer without a weekly paycheck coming in, so I wouldn't walk away from it. And maybe I should have done that. But if I had done that, then I would have done The Sopranos. So who knows?
How has television changed since you first started the business?
Well, I think there's HBO, and I guess Showtime after that, and then I don't think it has changed.
Did you have a mentor as a writer?
Well, some of the people I've talked about. I mean, I guess Paul Pladen was a mentor to me early on. I learned a lot from him about story. And Steve, to a certain extent. I never took anything from any television. I never learned from watching TV. Or said, oh, I want to do a show like that. Or, oh, that's really good. I'd like to. Well, maybe Twin Peaks a little bit. But that's about it, mentor-wise, I think. I mean, I've had people that I worked with, older guys and women that I worked with, but I cannot say that they really influenced my writing. Or anything.
And are there people that would consider you their mentor?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't like I really don't like the idea of running a writing school when I'm trying to do a TV show. That's not my job description. And I really don't want to do that. I mean, I hope people that have worked with me have feel that it's been beneficial. I guess they do. Whether they would consider me a mentor, I don't know. Some of them probably do. Some of them probably don't. Some of them probably hate my guts. But I hope that the ones that I like, I hope they felt it was beneficial.
What advice would you give to an aspiring writer today?
It's all cliches, really. I mean, first of all, you have to really do it. You can't talk about it. You actually have to just sit down and do it. And it's very, very difficult. You have to do it, and you have to do it again, and you have to do it again, you have to do it again, you have to do it again, and then rewrite it again. That's tough. Even people who, go to Ivy League colleges, we're all used to, I didn't go to an Ivy League college, but we're all used to like cramming and getting that paper done the night before. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work like that. It can, but not really.
What about maintaining a voice?
See, I don't know how you could consciously do that. I don't know what that would mean. Either you have a voice or you don't. And I think there are a lot of people around who don't particularly have a voice. And so it's very generic what they write. I don't know how you develop a voice or maintain a voice. And then you can say, well, you know what, believe in what you're doing. It comes from your heart. Okay, but what if you're not talented? That's not going to work out that well. So that's kind of a cliche. It's an empty cliche. Yeah, you definitely have to believe in what you're doing. It has to come from your heart, but that's not the key to that's not going to make it happen. You have to be really. It's luck. It's so much of it is luck. I am really lucky. I don't know why it happened. I don't know why The Sopranos was a big deal. I got lucky. Although maybe actually acknowledging that is a help.
Acknowledging
that a lot of it is luck, and it's not you. That maybe you're not even responsible for all this, what you did. all your great stuff or all your bad stuff. That you're, I don't want to be too philosophical about it, but that, sometimes as a writer, and you really do feel once in a while like, you know what? I feel like something's coming through me onto this page. I don't know where and from whom, but I don't think I'm in control of it. That happens once in a while. That's when it really feels good.
How about maintaining the integrity, though, once it's on the page, though? Was that something that you felt that you were a fighter, that this is the way it's going to be? And
Absolutely. You can't let people talk you out of stuff. You just can't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. And even if they do, so do you, and you just can't listen to them. That's for sure.
And
Is that what you meant by maintaining a voice?
Yes, and it also is, but how were you able to control that? It seems like that's such a hard thing to do in this business.
You have to be prepared to get fired. You have to be prepared to say, you know what, and if you kick me off this show, I don't give a flying fuck. I'm gone. In fact, maybe I'll leave tomorrow. You have to be thinking that way all the time. Otherwise, they're going to, as Catherine O'Hara's character said in Beetlejuice, she was talking to, what's her name, Winona Ryder. People, whether they're living or dead, will walk all over you. And that's true.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I hope we'll be able to come back to you in a few years and find out what your current projects
Hope
now
I'm doing
are
something.
and how they went. But thank you very, very much.
Thank
for
you.
American Television.
Thank you.